A good point. Trans people are just trying to figure themselves out. By making a public spectacle out of it, but most aren't harming anyone. Nazis just want to kill you. Most trans people actually aren't making a public spectacle out of it. Many of us cannot make it public at all due to the family or environment that we live in. To say otherwise is the great straw man. Most trans folk are just trying to pass and live their lives. It might also hypothetically shock you to find out that plenty of trans people are not trying to figure themselves out. We've already found ourselves out for the most part, and life is literally just a constant struggle to get the rest of the world to stop fighting us over it. The entire world is obsessed with transvestigation, digging into our lives and calling us lunatics and enemies of the people because we just want to live as we are most comfortable. Candace Owens can't stop slandering the French president's fucking wife so much on live stream that she's been sued over it, while that particular specific lady is presumably just trying to live in her own fucking world. That hardly seems like the trans folk are making a public spectacle. It is the transphobes, so it seems, who are making the trans people into a public spectacle. Most of us in the LGBTQ+ would rather just pay attention to the rest of our lives, paying the bills, feeding ourselves, trying to get ahead in our careers, helping make life less shitty wherever we can. But unfortunately, people gotta bring a ton of attention to us and make us justify ourselves, demand we show off our literal genitalia to prove that we're using the right bathroom, which they then scream about making us into a public spectacle, despite the fact that the only people making drama in the public restrooms are, of course, the transphobes. Back when we were a kid, and we grew up around trans folk, this whole transvestigation thing wasn't a thing. You asked someone their name, they told you, you referred to them as they were obviously working to present, even if that meant you were talking to a bearded lady. That stuff just happens, and we got over it. It wasn't a thing before the 2000s. Trans folk were quite invisible in most of society. We went surprisingly unnoticed, and when we were noticed, it wasn't a big thing, because people knew to mind their own fucking business when it came to everyday affairs that were not obviously criminal. But now that people are making a big fuss about us, we literally have to speak out to avoid persecution, abuse, and to try to get out of the horrendously higher sexual assault and demographically directed violence that comes with being part of the trans community. And you call that making a public spectacle. Because we have to advocate for ourselves to avoid being... One moment, let us check our notes again. Raped and killed. Right. Literally killed for what we are. And people call this public spectacle, as you say, the trans agenda. The trans agenda, in reality, is pretty simple. Stop being attacked for what we are, attain the same legal representation as cis people, get the best medical care we can, same as anyone else, regardless of our personal identity, stop regressive authoritarian bigotry, which caused all this shit in the first place, and be comfortable in our own skin. Maybe a bit of, eat the rich and embrace socialist values, but that's hardly a trans thing. It's just sort of a regular theme that ends up rearing its head in trans communities, essentially everywhere we go. The specifically trans community, as a whole, represents less than 1% of the United States of America's population. When you think about how 25% of the United States of America is currently enabling and spurring on an actively fascist regime that has made the backbone of its political goals to destroy that already vulnerable, less than 1% demographic, because they say trans people are mentally ill lunatics that want to destroy America? Who exactly is making the public spectacle, we ask? All we're asking, as a demographic, is equal and equitable treatment and representation under the law. That is worth making a big public thing about, at least if you ask us. In the meantime, our opposition wants to literally erase us, our entire demographic, from history, and works hard every day to do so by making us out to be literal nutjobs on the country's largest media platforms. A demographic so small and proportionately powerless that it has exactly one public representative in Congress as of 2024, the first ever, and must appeal to outside demographics just to get appropriate representation outside of her jurisdiction. They must appeal to you, who casually state that the act of that appeal is making a public spectacle. Might it surprise you to find out that position is what is holding us back from getting our basic rights? This isn't meant for the record to be an attack. It's just that, as a member of the trans community who works very hard to be fairly open about the needs of our demographic, compared to its very tiny size and the overwhelming hate against it, we feel the need to direct attention to the fact that the legal system in our country has literally made our existence as a non-binary individual federally unrecognized. We are literally an illegal person. We cannot travel freely outside of the country because our nation will not let us put our personal gender on a passport, even though it did just a couple years ago. We had that right. It was ours. We were happy with it. We had access to it like anyone else, like every natural-born free American citizen. And now, because of an 80-year-old bigot cult leader who calls himself chosen by God and employs anti-science nutjobs at the top of our society who evidently really do want to destroy America, we don't. We don't have that right anymore. And when we complained about it, literally everyone we talked to outside of the trans community just asked us, well, why can't you just put male? Well, because you see, our identification card already says our gender, our sex, is X. So if we signed M, the federal government could attack us for perjury and literally use us as the exact straw man trans villain they've been demonizing as a fear-mongering tactic amongst the American populace all along. A devious and malicious figure trying to claim one thing while legally identifying with something else to commit crimes, carry out deception, and gain access to otherwise prohibited locations. And when we explained that, nobody seemed to understand. They thought we were making a scene because we were upset that we now cannot freely travel to other countries because the bigots in charge, who have to impress their regressive values on others, made enough of a scene themselves that we don't get to have that freedom anymore. It's very hurtful and outright dangerous to the freedoms and health of others to label their concerns of being oppressed and ignored as a demographic as merely public spectacle. This is actually the same mindset at the foundation of hysteria, a terribly sexist diagnostic label used for literal centuries to discount, discredit, and dismiss the needs of women by saying they're just causing a scene. And for this all too casual dismissal of half of humanity's needs, uncountable numbers of women who required real medical attention died, and our medical system still lacks necessary information to guarantee female-bodied individuals' healthcare outcomes as high as cis white males. We cannot, as good people in good conscience. Those who claim that we live in the greatest country in the world insist to ourselves that everyone is doing everything for attention. We must at some point humanize them and describe direct personal motivations to them that they themselves have stated publicly. The trans community is exceedingly clear on what our goals are, and it always has been. To try to assert otherwise is exactly the sort of casual dismissal that we have to make noise to rise above, that we simply must make into a public spectacle. And to state that it is merely a public spectacle, a PR stunt, a drive at base attention, these things reduce and dehumanize the entire demographic into mere agitators trying to cause trouble for the good working of our society. And that is literally the way that the Trump administration has been consistently referring to the trans community at large for as long as he has been in front of a microphone. We, the LGBTQ+, are not criminals. We are not trying to get attention for our time in the sun. We are not mentally ill, radical left lunatics trying to destroy America. We are people, fellow Americans, just like you, and all we want is to have the same recognition, representation, rights, freedom, and support as everyone else. That which we are not currently getting. It was once that way with black people, with women, with Native Americans, with Jews, even with the Irish. The bigots at the head of our government withheld from them the same rights and privileges of the upper-class cisgender white males. But in time, we saw the error of our ways as a nation. We freed the slaves. We incorporated the natives. We normalized the Jews and Irish. We enfranchised and allowed women to own property, vote, and have their own bank accounts. While the regressive bigotry of racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, and so forth still remain, much of society largely accepts it as a shitty thing of the past and has embraced these demographics as just yet more people, just yet more natural-born American citizens. Why not less than 1% of the American population, natural-born and raised on American soil? Why are we finding it so hard to listen to the cries of such a tiny and vulnerable demographic for the same basic rights and privileges that we have given so many other vulnerable demographics in the past? Shall we make the same mistakes as yesteryear and hold out, digging our heels into the sand until popular forces make us accept trans people as, well, people? Or are we going to learn from our past mistakes and accept that all of this is an extension of us not really knowing about the object of our suspicion? You seem to think that calling out to be treated as equal to everyone else is making a public spectacle, as though such a thing is not worth making some noise. But we see it differently. We see it as a matter integral to the foundation of our nation. We know we can come on strong about this kind of stuff, but we do hope that you don't take this as just us getting angry and making a scene and causing a public spectacle, and instead take it as a desperate call to someone else to reconsider their perspective on matters in the world around them. We can all benefit from a bit of a wider pool of experience on occasion. We can all benefit from legitimately asking the people that we don't know much about what their gig is. All people are created equal according to our Constitution, not just all cis people. And if you believe that, come 2028, you will vote progressive. You'll vote Bull Moose. You'll vote David A. Gray for President of the United States of America.